On a matter of national security, a British MP just ended a prime minister's career in under 15 minutes. No screaming, no chaos. Just surgical precision and receipts. This is how you destroy someone politely. Inside the House of Commons, Kemi Badenoch stood up with one mission: expose a cover-up that threatens every elected official in Britain. A spy case collapsed. Evidence in a government that suddenly can't remember what it said about China. What happened next wasn't just politics. It was a public execution by PowerPoint. Before we break this down second by second, do me a favor if you want more political breakdowns that actually tell you what's happening. Hit subscribe. Most of you watch without subscribing, and it's the easiest way to support content like this. Done good, let's get into the carnage. Here's what you need to know. 2 people were charged with spying on British MPs for China. The case was solid. MI5 was involved. The charges were filed, and then suddenly, without warning, the entire prosecution collapsed. The government's explanation vague, evasive, suspicious, but Kemi Badenoch came prepared. She didn't just ask questions. She brought a timeline, government documents, direct quotes and receipts that couldn't be denied. And she was about to make the Prime Minister regret every word he'd ever said about China. This is the session where someone's credibility died in real time. The session starts with respect. There's a moment of silence for Sir David Ames, the MP who was murdered in 2021, a reminder that the security of Parliament isn't a joke. It's life or death, and that's exactly why this collapsed spy case is so damning. Badenoch wastes no time. She stands up and asks the Prime Minister directly, "Why did this case collapse? How is it possible that the government failed to provide the evidence prosecutors needed?" The Prime Minister responds with the political equivalent of a shrug. He says, "The evidence was submitted back in 2023 under the previous government. Not our responsibility, not our problem." But Badenoch isn't here for excuses. She's here for answers. She pulls out her first piece of evidence. In 2021, the UK government's integrated review officially classified China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. So that's not an opinion piece. That's official government policy. Then she drops another one. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 publicly called China a threat, on record in front of cameras. No ambiguity. So if everyone in government knew China was a threat, if MI5 was ringing alarm bells, and if the charges were filed based on solid evidence, why did the prosecution fall apart? The Prime Minister stumbles. He tries to redirect. He says, "The previous government carefully avoided using the word enemy." When describing China, he pulls a quote from the former Foreign Secretary who said, "Calling China a threat in one word would be impossible. Impractical and unwise." Badenoch doesn't even blink. She's ready. She fires back with another quote. This time it's from the current leader of the opposition, who in September 2023 said we should not be describing China as a foe. Then she goes further. She reminds the House that the Prime Minister himself once said, "I have shied away from calling China a threat." At the room shifts, MPs are leaning forward now, because Badenoch just revealed something crucial. This isn't about one government versus another. Everyone played soft with China. Everyone danced around the language. And now a spy case has collapsed because of it. But here's the kicker the Prime Minister tries to claim: that Badenoch took his quote out of context. He says if you read the full quote, "I did describe China as a threat." Badenoch's response is ice cold. You can read the beginning of a quote all you want, but those spies were charged under a conservative government. They were let off under Labour. You have not answered any questions. The Prime Minister has no comeback, and the silence in that moment speaks volumes. And then Badenoch drops the bombshell that changes everything. The Sunday Times reported that Jonathan Powell, your national security advisor, convened a secret meeting to discuss the security consequences of the China spy trial. Did the meeting happen, or is the Sunday Times making it up? The room goes dead quiet. This is the moment everyone's been waiting for. The Prime Minister pauses. He's calculating, and then he says, "There was a meeting in September, but it did not involve the national security advisor discussing the evidence in any way." Badenoch isn't satisfied if there was a meeting. Who attended what was discussed, and why does the security minister claim that only the deputy national security advisor, one man, had full autonomy over this decision? The Prime Minister insists that no ministers were involved. No special advisors, just the deputy. Full freedom to make the call. Badenoch's voice cuts through the chamber. Is the government seriously saying that only one man had anything to do with this failure? Did he not speak to the National Security Advisor? Did he not speak to the Home Secretary? Did he not speak to anyone in Downing Street? It sounds absurd, and everyone in the room knows it. Here's the problem, and Badenoch lays it out like a prosecutor closing a case. The charges were filed in April 2024. The Crown Prosecution Service said the evidence was solid. The decision to charge was correct. The case was moving forward. Then the current government takes power and suddenly, the case collapses. The CPS releases a statement saying they were satisfied. The decision to charge was correct, based on the law at that time. So what changed? Badenoch demands an answer. Something must have changed between when the charges were brought and when the case collapsed. The charges were brought under us. The case collapsed under them. Can the Prime Minister tell us what changed? The Prime Minister promises transparency. He says he'll publish the witness statements. He'll release everything. The House will see exactly what evidence was submitted in 2023 and what was added later but not today. He needs to go through proper channels. First, he needs to notify the individuals involved. Badenoch isn't buying it. That's not good enough. If there's nothing to hide, publish the witness statements today. Publish the meeting minutes. Publish all correspondence with the CPS. Show us everything. The delay feels like guilt. And then the Prime Minister makes a critical mistake. He tries to discredit Badenoch personally. He says she's clearly not a lawyer or a leader. It's a low blow and the room reacts immediately. MPs are shouting. The tension spikes because personal attacks in Parliament, while allowed, always reveal desperation. But Badenoch doesn't get defensive. She doesn't take the bait. Instead, she goes harder. She reminds the House that this Prime Minister recently expressed full confidence in someone who was closely associated with a convicted pedophile. Her exact words, "Forgive us if we don't trust a word." He says the damage is done. The Prime Minister's credibility just took a fatal hit, and Badenoch still isn't finished. This all stinks of a cover-up, she says, and the chamber erupts. She points out that the government is blaming everyone. They're blaming civil servants. They're blaming the media. They're blaming the previous government. But they cannot explain why they failed to provide the evidence. Prosecutors needed to see this case through. And then she lands the accusation that will haunt this government for months. A serious case involving national security has collapsed because this government is too weak to stand up to China. Let that sink in. Weak on national security. On China in front of the entire Parliament. The Prime Minister tries to respond, but his words are drowned out by shouting MPs. The moment has already passed. The narrative is set. Badenoch leans into the microphone one final time. Her voice is calm, measured, deadly. If the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country's silence? It's the kind of silence that happens when someone delivers a line, so devastating, so perfectly constructed that there's no comeback. No spin, no defense. The Prime Minister sits frozen. His team is scrambling, but the clip has already been created. That line will be on every news channel, every podcast, every social media feed within the hour. Kemi Badenoch just delivered the political equivalent of a checkmate. So let's recap what just happened. A spy case involving Chinese espionage on British MPs collapsed under the current government's watch. The Prime Minister blames the previous government, but evidence shows they classified China as a threat years ago. A secret meeting was held, but no one will explain what was discussed. When pressed for transparency, the government delays. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch showed up with a timeline, government quotes, and zero patience for vague answers. She exposed contradictions, demanded accountability, and delivered a closing line that will define this government's weakness. On national security, this wasn't a debate. It was a deception, and the Prime Minister just learned what happens when you walk into Parliament unprepared. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we cut through the political spin and show you what's actually happening, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button and drop a comment below. Was Kemi right to call this a cover-up? Or is this just political theater? Let's debate it, because one thing is crystal clear in British politics. Being polite doesn't mean being nice. And today someone learnt that the hard way.